Hi, Marlon. My name is Nathan Bridge. I'm the Vice President of Exploration for CanAlaska Uranium. We're a small junior exploration company focused in the Athabasca Basin in Canada. We employ a hybrid project generator model, meaning that we have projects that we operate with our shareholder dollars and projects that we generate on, that we look for option agreements, joint ventures, or eventual sale.
Nathan, good to be speaking to you again. Thank you for the introduction. We will talk about the prospector generator model in due course. I'm not always a fan, but there are times and places when it works. But before we do that, I've had a look at your slide deck, the new corporate presentation, and it tells me that you've got a number of drill programs coming up. So just to understand kind of what the technical basis for these drill programs are, please, let's talk. Can you talk me through those drill programs, starting with, I think, the one you're on at the moment, which is McArthur River? Yeah,
absolutely. So we're going to be active at both West McArthur and Key Extension this winter. Those are two very important projects for us here in CanAlaska's portfolio. West McArthur, I think, is obviously the flagship right now. I think before the last time we talked, over the summer here, we went out and completed a 10,000 meter diamond drill program on some new geophysics that we had run. So we had to update the geophysics to relocate that conductor. And that conductor is what is important in these unconformity uranium deposits. So we did that in the winter of 2021. Went out and drilled our regional holes. And on the second regional test in the summer of 2022, we intersected high-grade mineralization. So we made a new discovery. The company has termed it the Pike Zone. The discovery hole, we had about 9 meters at 2.5% uranium. Located about 100 meters below the unconformity, so this is basement hosted at this point. And we spent our summer essentially trying to understand the controls of this new discovery. We came out of the summer with West McArthur with 4 intersections of uranium leading us back towards the unconformity. So that unconformity target still exists, and it's our key goal for 2023. So we just announced a couple of weeks ago that we started our 2023 exploration program. We doubled the budget this year on West McArthur. It's a $10 million program. And what that'll do for us is that's about 20,000 meters of drilling at the depths that we are at West McArthur. It probably will end up being about 25 to 30 intersections of the target horizon. Because we are a little bit deeper at West McArthur, we've actually changed the technology that we're using this year. So we've employed a directional technology, a mud motor, that's going to help us to try to pinpoint some of these targets with a little bit more precision.
To just run that by me again, you've employed a directional drilling. What do you call it? A mud monitor.
A mud motor, yeah. So what it is we're able to take a pilot hole. So because we have depths at West McArthur, absolutely, there's some decent sandstone cover. So what we're able to do is we take that mud motor and we create one pilot hole, and we're able to fan off that pilot hole. So instead of starting every single drill hole at surface, drilling 850 meters of sandstone, we essentially can start every drill hole around 400, 500 meters, eliminating that upper, 400 to 500 meters that we don't require anymore, which in turn allows us to have more intersections of the target with that 20,000 meters.
And how many pilot holes do you think you're going to be drilling this year?
Yeah, I think that's going to be really results dependent. Our focus for the winter here is going to be on understanding the immediate extensions of the Pike Zone. So we've got an area that we've defined as a project team here saying about 400 meters wide. That's about 200 meters on either side of that initial discovery fence. We're focused on understanding the structure, the controls, the mineralization, both in the basement and at the unconformity in that zone around Pike. And we stuck to that particular size because knowing that how these unconformity deposits form and the sizes that they typically form, that's a good footprint for us to kind of focus on. By doing that, what it allows us to do is we can probably get away with, 4 to 6 pilot holes to garner those 25 to 30 intersections of the unconformity.
Okay, so that makes sense, kind of 4 or 5 holes of each pilot hole. Now, you are completely familiar with all of this geography and geology. For me, coming into it cold, it would really help if you could just pull up the regional map first, just so I can revisit the geophysics from 2021, so I can see where the conductors are and where you are. You call it the C10 Corridor. And I just want to understand visually, can you just remind me where you're moving to? And I just want to kind of have a look at that. So if you could share, that'd be really helpful. So thank you, Nathan. I can see the new targets for 2022 drilling. Can you just describe the C10 corridor for me from that smaller map on the bottom right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the C10 corridor, it's quite an important corridor in the eastern Athabasca. So if you look at the map at the bottom right here, what you can see on the far right is the McArthur River mine. So that's hosted along the P2 corridor, multiple pods along that string. Now the C10 corridor, which is located in the middle of that map and then extends onto the West McArthur joint venture project, it's host to quite a few deposits, the Fox Lake deposits. So there's about 70 million pounds at 8% uranium in the Fox Lake deposits. That's owned by Cameco and Orano. That C10 corridor then trends onto the West McArthur joint venture. Now, historically, it was thought to go more of an east-west direction across the property here. We went out and we reran the geophysics in 2022 to try to relocate that conductor. And what you see now is there's two of those blue conductive corridors, one that trends more in that typical east-west and one that actually trends down a little bit more to the southwest. So our goal in 2022, while we were working on the 42 zone, was to go out and understand, is one of these corridors, the C10, or host of the structure that actually controls the mineralization for the Fox Lake deposits and the 42 zone. And what we found is on that first hole.
Can I just back up the conductor? Yeah. So what is the conductive horizon here? You know, are we talking? Are these deep-seated crustal structures with some kind of conductive mineral associated with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So in typical Athabasca Basin deposits, the conductors usually represent graphitic P-lights. So those are graphitic metasedimentary rocks, and they generate that conductive signal. So you can see in the background on that image on the left, that is a Z10 survey. You can see those wide conductive corridors that it's highlighted. The actual blue lines or conductors are what we measure from the ground survey. So we get a better idea of where the strongest conductivity is along those lines. And typically, the reason that the graphitic P-lights are such a great target is because they're a lot softer than the rocks around them. So they're a little bit more brittle, and they'll break easier than, say, some of the harder granites and the domes that are on either side in those, blue low areas on the map on the left.
Hang on. I'm just trying to get my head around this. So the P-lights are part of the Athabasca Basin sequence. They're not part of the basement, crystalline basement geology, but the mineralization is in the underlying basement geology. So how does the P-light, which sits in the sedimentary basin, or perhaps it doesn't, how does the P-light guide you to the mineralization which is in the basement?
Yeah, so the P-lights are in the basement. So that would be what we call the lower Wollaston. So the lower Wollaston rocks in this area were initially sedimentary, I guess. And through metamorphic processes, now we have metasedimentary rock. So the basement cover here is politic metasediments, and then the Athabasca sandstone overlies those. Okay,
and they're much younger, and so
they're
that's
much younger, yes.
Hence the erosional contact and the unconformity. Okay, I'm with you. Sorry, I'm ignorant and therefore learning slowly. And what did you have at the 42 zone, and why did you call that a discovery? And how far is the Pike Zone from the what you found last year from the 42 zone?
Yeah, the 42 zone was a discovery that was made in 2017 as part of the joint venture here with Cameco. Cameco is our partner on West McArthur. The 42 zone right now, it's about 125 meters wide. We've got up to 8% uranium in assay. That's classic unconformity hosted mineralization. So it's sitting right at that contact between those basement rocks and the base of the sandstone. And with the 42 zone, though, what's really anomalous about it is the alteration halo. It's got quite a significant alteration halo, and there's a lot of structure in the area. And I think that's related to the conductive corridor changing its direction here, is that it makes that bend. But what the 42 zone tells us about this trend is that we're on the right target. You can see on that map on the right, we have the C10 corridor, the Fox Lake deposits, you have the 42 zone. Now we have the Pike discovery, which on this map would be located on this red star down here. That was our first target on the C10 South corridor. The distance between the Pike zone and the 42 zone, it's about 6 kilometers right now.
Okay. when you talk about 42 zone discovery, that's more like a kind of a conceptual. You're testing the geological model rather. You're not moving in to drill this out. You're not calling that a deposit discovery. It's a mineralizing style observation.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got a small zone here. There's mineralization there. Again, that idea of pearls on a string. This is one of those small pods along the string of the C10 corridor. There is still targets. It's still open in all directions. So we haven't completely delineated the 42 zone yet. But obviously, with our new results, our focus has shifted to the Pike Zone.
And was it the geophysics that just looked really sweet on that Pike Zone? And to me, it looks as if that the target to the west also looks pretty juicy.
That's where we came out of our geophysical survey and said, okay, well, we've got two really nice targets. So we drilled that target to the west that you're referring to, this guy right here, and there was no structure, no alteration, nothing anomalous. Unfortunately, that's what happens in exploration from time to time. And so what's really odd about this area is that if you'll recall, when we talked about our 2021 drill program, we had a fence right at the edge of the C10, or sorry, the 42 zone extension here, where we had a large fault, and all the drilling to the west didn't seem to line up. We lost the fault, we lost all the alteration, we lost the chemistry, and so we couldn't understand exactly where it was going. So the next best case in this scenario is that, well, perhaps it's jumping down to that southern corridor that we call the C10 South, which is why when we did the geophysical survey, we made sure to cover both those corridors. So our second hole after we drilled that regional test was a regional test on that southern corridor. And what we found is really great structure in the lower sandstone associated with alteration, a really wide package of metasedimentary rocks, which are great host rocks, graphitic pelites in there. And then the Pike Zone discovery, which is that 9 meters at 2.5%. So a very good first hole on a regional target.
And do you have a map of the planned holes or the planned area of interest for the 2023 drilling? Because I can see that those are the new targets for 2022 drilling. What happens now? Yeah,
so the 2023 program, like I mentioned earlier, we're really focused in and around the Pike Zone and that 400-meter extension around Pike. So just for a little bit of background here to show you where we ended 2022 at and where we're going with 2023. So in 2022, we ended up with 4 mineralized intersections in the Pike Zone. So you can see them here on the left-hand side. We've outlined kind of a mineralized envelope. And on the right, you can see the stars where we've identified the mineralization both on and off section as it approaches that unconformity target. So our focus for 2023 is staying within this immediate area. We believe we understand the structural control now. You can see the orientation of the mineralized envelope. So we're going to follow that mineralized envelope to the unconformity. Reason for that, in these sorts of deposits, typically the highest grades are located at the unconformity. And this is because this is where you get the most space. So you get your basement fluids coming up along those gray graphitic pelites. You get your sandstone fluids mixing. They mix at that unconformity target where the structures have created a lot of space. And that space allows the mineralization to drop out in really significant grades. And why we're really excited about the unconformity target, it's actually the last hole of the program that we did. That's this slide here. That's 72.3. 72.3, we had up to 25% U3O8 in assay. So one sample ran 25, which is phenomenal grades.
Is that a pitch blend?
That's just basically solid uranium steel. Yeah, that's straight uranite. Yeah.
Is the precipitation between the oxidizing waters? I mean, is it a redox reaction between the oxidized sandstone, the basinal waters at the base of the sandstone, with the reduced waters coming up the fluid pathway of the pelites?
That's exactly what it is. That's what makes these deposits form. It's just a simple redox reaction. You have uranium that's, when it's oxidized in the sandstone fluids, it's mobile. Hits basement fluids or reduced fluids, and the reaction between those two fluids, as long as you have space and the right EH/pH controls, you drop out that mineralization at the unconformity.
The fracture-hosted mineralization in the basement is simply because that is how deep the oxidizing fluids, uranium-bearing oxidizing fluids, can penetrate down a permeable fluid pathway.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's that fluid mixing in the basement, so that the ingress system. So you've got the fluids traveling down the fault, mixing with the basement fluids down along those. It typically forms where you get kind of two faults that come together, so along a lineation in the basement. That's classic for what you'd see at an Eagle Point or Millennium. The structures are really important in the basement, where you get two orientations that intersect. You get the space to be able to drop out significant grades. The unconformity is more flat lying, so you get more of a pancake style.
And so the intersection between two structures, you create kind of a pipe-like deposit, and the where you get the unconformity one, where you get the structure of the fluid pathway hitting the base, the base of the sedimentary basin. That's where you can get the pancake, and presumably these are long-lived processes. So kind of as the basin kind of sinks and dewaters, you have a kind of a continual flow of over a long geological period. This is a geological time frame, not a human time frame, which allows the concentration of mineralization in that spot.
Yeah, so most of the mineralization in the Athabasca Basin, just in general, just as a general statement, is typically about 1.5 billion years old. It seems to be the main mineralizing event. Now, because of that redox reaction that you mentioned, these deposits are very sensitive to resetting. That uranium can be remobilized. So there's multiple, if you look at timelines for mineralization, there's multiple resetting events throughout the entire history of the basin. What these are actually really quite useful for, and why we like exploring at the depths that we do out here at West McArthur, is that the remobilization of those elements actually creates some pretty significant halos. I talked about it at 42 zone, where we see that large geochemical halo above 42 zone. That's a result of secondary remobilization of the fluids to create these alteration halos. So, yep, deep sandstone is one thing, but deep sandstone can also be really beneficial if you understand how these fluids move along these structures.
Good. Well, I'm learning a lot about the geology and how these deposits are formed. But just in terms of the kind of the concrete work that you're going to be doing, the actual drilling plan, presumably you're essentially targeting inside of that hashed area in that right-hand diagram, which says unconformity target.
Yep. Absolutely. So we've got two drills right now on site. One is targeting the unconformity target immediately ahead of that mineralized envelope. The other is targeting the unconformity target area immediately behind the hole to the right there, WMA 73. So we took one shot at the unconformity at the very end of the season and overshot our target. About 200 meters above the unconformity in 73, we have really nice developed structure, a little geochemical halo that goes with it. And that tells us to step back about 60 meters behind that drill hole. So that's what we're doing with our second rig right now as we speak, actually.
Can you try and point with your mouse on that screen? Because I can't see exactly what you're...
Yeah, absolutely. So here's our first one. So we'll be stepping ahead of WMA 67 here. Test immediately up dip of that mineralization that we've identified in the basement. And the second one we'll be targeting over here. That's about 60 meters step back from WMA 73, where we overshot our target.
Okay. I still haven't got the three-dimensional geometry in my head, but fine. Let's leave it at that. Yeah. So that drill program that you're talking about, the $10 million budget, what do you reckon? 20,000 meters of drilling, roughly, and the 25 to 30 pierce points. Mm-hmm. How long is that going to take? And how reactive can you be? Do you need to drill a few months and then have a break and then come back again, or will you be able to work it through dynamically as you go?
Yeah, so this, like I mentioned earlier, this project is a joint venture with Cameco, which means we have a budgeting cycle and we have a JV that we have to follow. We control about 80% right now. So we do have a JV process. So in the fall, we went through that JV process. We established a $10 million budget, the work plan that goes with it, as you mentioned. So depending on results, there's mechanisms with that joint venture, but it really depends on results. So we try to stick to the timeline as close as we can. The timeline right now, we'll see us probably putting, my hope is to put about 65 to 70% of the drilling into the winter here. We're going to pause the drilling probably mid-April, and then we're running a second geophysical survey. So as one of the things you pointed out there, the distance between 42 zone and Pike is about 6 kilometers. The trend also continues for another 9 kilometers on the property. So while we're understanding the Pike Zone, in the future, we're going to need to be able to understand where some other deposits may exist on this trend. We've seen it with the Fox Lake deposits. You have the 42 zone, now the Pike Zone. There's still tremendous potential along this. We're talking about 15 kilometers where we haven't actually tested this corridor. So we'll be doing another geophysical survey for about 2 months in the spring that'll help us prioritize which line to go first once we step away from Pike. I want to be clear, though, our focus right now is on the Pike Zone. That is our goal for 2023. And then once that geophysical survey is done, we'll reoccupy the camp there and complete the rest of that 30% of the drilling that we have remaining in the budget. And
are you going to concentrate on the southern most limb of that kind of as the corridor splits? Are you going to follow the Pike structure or the Pike P lights down, or are you going to also cover the western P lights?
No, I think at this point, the team and myself and the team, we're content with the fact that we think we're back on the right corridor. We see the 42 zone, we see the indications of a large fault, large system in and around Pike Zone here on the C10 South. That's the focus for the company right now. Even from outside of Pike regional perspective, only on that C10 South corridor. We're gonna leave that other one alone for now.
Are there any geochemical techniques that you can use when you're dealing with a buried target 600 or 700 meters down or more?
Yeah. I mean, actually, one of the things I learned very early in my career is that uranium is the best pathfinder for uranium. It's extremely mobile. There's a lot of other elements that you can use as pathfinders, arsenic, boron, copper, nickel, but they're all associated with the redox process, and uranium is just extremely mobile. So what we do is we actually sample the entire sandstone column from top to bottom, and we look for low-level anomalies. And in the Athabasca, low-level anomaly would be a ppm of uranium. That sandstone is so clean that 1 ppm of uranium really shouldn't be there. So, we start seeing anomalies like 1, 2, 3 ppm on regional targets. That's encouraging. When you start to see samples that generate in the 5, 10, 15 ppm uranium, that's extremely encouraging. Those are very significant halos for unconformity deposits. So again, that exploring undercover, you can use it to your advantage if you understand how the system forms and how the fluids move around those basins.
And does that work with grab samples, or is there glacial till over this whole thing? I mean,
There's glacial till, yeah. We got about 30 meters of overburden cover. There is techniques, I know, in my time in the industry, I've seen a lot of different techniques tried. I think tried and true is still the geochemistry, but in order to get the geochemistry, you have to drill. So without that, there's other superficial techniques you can use, but a little bit more.
And when you say drilling, you mean diamond drilling. You don't mean rotary air blast to kind of get through to the bottom, or to do base of till or top of fresh rock.
It's not something I've done in my career. I've seen it tried a couple times in a couple different spots in the basin with varying degrees of success. Not something I'm familiar with. At this stage that we're at West McArthur, diamond drill is essentially the way to go.
Okay, interesting. And I think it's important that you do that geophysics down the whole corridor, because unless you cast your net wide across your primary mineralizing structure, you'll never know whether you're actually on the best target or not.
Well, that's the challenge we face right now. Is we have 15 kilometers, and as you can see from that map I showed with the corridor, there's lots of deposits along this corridor. We have no idea if we're in the right spot. And that's the goal here. Is okay, get an understanding of Pike Zone. We have mineralization, so let's understand the size of it. That doesn't mean that this is the right spot to be. So we need another tool in our tool belt here to try to help us move ahead after we've got our controls around Pike Zone.
And coming back to Pike Zone and calling it a discovery, when should someone call something a discovery? It's always a moot point. I often find that I've got a theory, or one of Merlin's spurious ideas is that discovery can only really be found in or defined in retrospect. So you can only say, that was the discovery hole after you've drilled 40, 50, 200, whatever it is, holes. And I've had good chats with Corey about the smell of it, and he feels it's a discovery because of all of the halo and the alteration and the physical smell of it. but I wonder whether you need more drill holes to start hanging together fences and in almost to be able to put a kind of a geological conceptual wireframe around a body before you can call it a discovery.
Yeah, for me right now, we've been very clear, and it's the Pike Zone. It's to us, it's the Eastern Athabasca's newest high-grade uranium discovery. You look at the grades that we've got. That initial discovery hole, 9 meters at 2.5%. You don't put 9 meters of 2.5% in any sort of small system. We look at our last hole this season, 25% uranium. 25% uranium is very significant. Those are extremely high grades. It takes a large system to form that high grade material. We fully recognize that we're one season into this. We're just getting our heads around the control. And so that's really what 2023 is focused on for us is, okay, can we start getting those multiple fences in so I can start doing that wireframe with a bit more confidence.
So that I can call it a discovery by the end of the year.
You call it a discovery at the beginning of the year. We get there. Yes,
yeah. Good, great. Thank you. Now let's jump to Key Lake Extension, which I also know not much about. Could you talk me into it before we get into slides?
Yeah, absolutely. So Key Extension is a really unique project. It's one that we actually acquired in October of 2021. So it's located just outside the southeastern part of the Athabasca Basin. It's about 10 kilometers from the Key Lake mine and mill. So the Key Lake mine produced about 150 million pounds of uranium historically. The mill operation there now is actually the mill that does all the ore from McArthur River. So it travels down the haul road to Key Lake. The project itself is located just essentially along the highway. It's the same highway that drives straight down to Saskatoon. And we got our hands on it in October of 2021. And we went after it for a very specific reason, is that it had very little modern geophysics and it had no significant drilling. For us, we believe that it's the extension of the Key Lake fault, the fault that hosts those deposits. We believe it comes onto the property, and so we went out in 2022 once we got our hands on the project and completed a ground gravity survey. I'll show you the map here in a couple minutes, and generated some great targets. They're a couple kilometer wide gravity lows. To us, that indicates alteration of those basement rocks. So we've got the fault, we've got our conductors that run through and they're disrupted in there, and we've got a gravity low. That's a classic basement target. That's exactly what you'd see at a next gen. That's what the Arrow deposit has. Look at Eagle Point, the O2 next zone. So, we were extremely pleased, I would say, with the results of the geophysical survey. And so now we're at the point where we have to drill it. There's no point in kind of beating around it anymore. It's get out and actually test the target, see if our theory proved right.
Get the truth machines on it.
Get the truth machine, yeah.
Good. Let's have a look at a map, please. Thank you. There we go. So Key Extension projects, new targets, drilling Q1 2023. I can see from the inset map that it's just outside the southeastern corner of the Athabasca Basin. So the sandstones may have been here. They've been eroded. You're close to surface. Presumably that will mean short drill holes.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see here on the left here, these are the results of the gravity survey that I talked about. So what we measure in ground gravity is the reduction in the density of the rocks, essentially. The lower, the gravity lows essentially show that the rocks have been altered, those basement rocks, and presumably by, hopefully, fluids that contain mineralization. So for Key Extension here, the goal is to focus on short holes, so 2, 3, potentially 400 meter long drill holes to test these gravity anomalies.
You said that just that middle anomaly, that middle blue spot, yeah. That's a kind of gravity low destruction of some feature in the underlying geology through hopefully hydrothermal fluid or fluid mixing. Some kind of chemical destruction.
Yeah.
And you said that these are up to a kilometer. What's the width on this?
Yeah, so that middle target, that's going to be actually the key grade, and that's going to be our first drill hole right into the center of that. The reason for that, as you can see, we've got an interpreted key lake fault here on this image that comes across these gravity lows. I don't have it on this map, but the historical conductors in the area are degraded as they come through that blue low. And it's about 2 kilometers wide, which is a fairly significant distance for a target. When we go look for gravity anomalies, our theory here, our thought is that they need to have some width to them. We don't want small, single line anomalies. We did this survey at about a 50 meter grid spacing across it. So this is an anomaly that covers, multiple lines of gravity, which tells us that it's probably a significant anomaly. It's not a one line anomaly. And that's really what we're focused on, is larger anomalies that go over multiple lines in our geophysics.
And how do you drill it? Are you confident that you know where the fault is, or do you have to put in a long fence of angled holes across it? Do you have to kind of put in 10 holes? Yeah,
so our first hole is going to be a long hole. That's very, very important in this area because there's no drill holes. So we don't actually know what the geology is doing. We have our ideas, our theories, but we don't actually know what the geology is doing. So our first hole will be in the middle of that target. We did some Maxwell modeling on the historical EM data. So what Maxwell modeling does, essentially, it fits a conductor plate to the geophysical data that you get. So we'll target where that geophysical plate is within that blue gravity low, and that first hole will be a longer hole. We're prepared to go up to about 400 meters or so to make sure that we have covered the rock to see if we can find the fault, find the alteration, and then those will guide which direction we go, up, down, north, south.
So it's kind of an orientation hole to begin with. And
you need one hole to figure out what's going on. Yeah, and that'll be the first hole. Yeah.
Just one hole?
Well, no. Don't quote me on that. You need one hole to figure out the orientation of the rocks, and from there we move out. And it all depends on the results, right? If we get great results, if we get really strong alteration and a nice fault, that's a much easier step out. If we don't get great results, then we've got to step back and potentially look at some of these other anomalies.
Yeah, I mean, it's very alluring, isn't it? Great big gravity low, the fault going through, is mineralisation in the area. But my goodness, you're not very data constrained. In some ways, this is it's proof of concept, really, is what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen, the reason we went at this with the gravity survey, the methods that we picked, is we saw recent successes outside of the basin. Good examples, I mentioned NextGen's Arrow deposit, a nice gravity low with a disrupted conductor, the Eagle Point deposits that's there. And, I think the most recent discovery in the eastern Athabasca is the Accio GNZ. We saw the work that they did there, EM, gravity low, mag breaks. Went and applied that here. We have the same geophysical signatures. So now it's time for us to, like you said, turn the truth machine on and see if we're right.
Good. Exploration at its finest. And hopefully it leads to a commercial discovery. But there's no guarantee, but
nope.
The harder you work, the luckier you get, so to speak.
Yeah. There's a little bit of luck in every discovery, but there's good science behind all of it. And I just with the team here, that's what we really try to push is, test the targets. Don't get too hung up on the target. Let's get out, test, look for the right indicators. Are they there? Are they not there? And either continue drilling or move on. This area, this discovery could be, not a discovery, obviously. This target could be quite significant. You're only 10 kilometers away from the Key Lake mine and mill. Infrastructure rich. You can see the highway runs right along the side of the property there. So if we could have some success here, it would be tremendously located from an infrastructure perspective.
Yeah, good. Now, I realize I could talk technical and geology all day, but with our viewers in mind, let's jump to your concept. Let's go to the project generation discussion. When a discovery is made, and I'm actually kind of slightly talking to myself, but when you've got a flagship which emerges, at that point, then it's become slightly distracting to call yourself a project generator. I think what investors want to see is that you're picking up a project and you're marching towards the horizon with that project and driving it up the value curve. And to me, a project generator model, it smacks of a group that hasn't found anything yet or not found anything, but hasn't taken it up the value curve, and it's really kind of focusing on that one project.
Yeah, the project generator model, it's we call it the hybrid project generator model. It's something that CanAlaska has done for its entire history, and it's allowed the company some great success along the way. It's built some great partners in some state-owned entities in the last run, and now in this current cycle, we're partnered with Denison and Cameco. We've got new partners in Basin Energy coming in off the Australian exchange. So it allows us to spread the risk on these projects that we do have. I think from my perspective here, we're very early at West McArthur. We've got one drill season in. We're trying to figure out what we have on our hands here. So we still maintain the project generator model today, and West McArthur dictates where we focus our attention. We have great targets like Key Extension. These targets aren't going away. And I think as a company, we look at it and say, we'd be remiss not to drill these targets. Key Extension is a good example of a project where we could have just as easily put it out into an option agreement. But once we got that geophysics back, Corey and I had quite a few discussions about it, and it's got all the right ingredients. I can't give it away. We gotta get it. We gotta get a drill on that, right? That if you could have success at Key Extension at the same time, the company is going to have a handful of targets to keep going after. So, I totally understand. CanAlaska historically has been a project generator. That's been the goal. That's what's allowed us to access the land that we have and the partners that we have. Pike does change that a bit. It's a great discovery here, and now we've got to see what it is and what that means for focusing the company. So very early in the Pike discovery, I think that's the big key message for me here.
Yes, I mean I agree. I revert back to that kind of earlier comment of perhaps by the end of the year it can be described as a discovery, even by the cynical, jaded observers of the mining industry. In a sense, I completely agree with the project generator model, where you use your geological nous to, just like you've described at Key Extension, which was to pick up the ground which had good geophysics and no drilling. I think earlier before we came on camera, you were talking about the frontier zone as well. That frontier new license, which is up kind of towards the kind of heading to the northeast. A similar thing, good geophysics, highly prospective area, no drilling, and you can pick up the license at very low cost. It's almost, I completely understand that it's a really prudent thing to do. It's a low risk way to get carried work or actually hard dollars into your company by selling off or joint venturing or doing deals on the kind of earlier stage portfolio. I think what I'm internalizing is that now that you have got a flagship, the project generation almost kind of can go along in the background. That's the kind of the hopper of new generation of projects. It's where you get your project pipeline from, but you talk about your flagship. So you don't stop your activity. You don't stop your geological thinking.
No, we don't stop what we're doing
down the line.
Yeah, it's something that the company's been very good at, and something that we pride ourselves in the deals that we've done. Basin Energy deals is our newest deal. They're our newest partner. It's a great example. We had 3 projects that we staked that have now turned into, if Basin is to proceed all the way through, about $50 million worth of work, and that's tremendous. That brings some hard dollars in for us. It brings us a partner in to spread the risk, and it allows our shareholders to share in success. If there is success there, we still own 20% of 2 of those projects. So that, to me, it's a great upside for our shareholders at a relatively low cost, and allows us to spread the risk. Frontier is a great example. We just announced Frontier about 2 weeks ago. We staked this one in December, I believe. It comes to what you pointed out there with the project generator model. Our goal here is, number one, it needs to be a significant corridor. We want to be along a significant corridor, and that's what Frontier is. It's along the same corridor that hosts the Rough Rider deposit, obviously a very significant deposit in the northeastern Athabasca. And we want to see somewhere where there's been no drilling or very little drilling that hasn't been anywhere on a target, and ideally no modern geophysics. I think that the geophysical techniques have come so far in the last 20 years that there's a lot of areas that are getting overlooked because they don't have modern geophysics. Pike is a great example. That survey was run, to flip back to West McArthur. That initial survey would have been done in 2005. 20 years later, we redid the survey, but basically a better resolution technique than they had at the time. At the time, they used the best technique they had available. We use what we believe is the best technique right now. The target moved to 300 meters. That 300 meters made clearly a very significant difference. So
good. Now I realise that we're almost out of time, but just to wrap up on key extension, how many meters are you drilling? What's your budget and what's your timeline on it, please?
Yeah, so at key extension here, we'll probably be about 1.2 to 1.3 million. That should get us about 2,000 to 2,200 meters, depending on drilling conditions out there. We actually have started the process of building the camp and getting that into place, and we're hoping, as we've told the market, we're hoping to be drilling here in early February. Probably be about a 6-week program. 6 to 8 drill holes. That would be our target. Again, this is first pass. We just want to get in and get a feel for what we might be dealing with on this project and allow us to make a decision on how to move it forward past that. And
what would constitute a technical success? I mean, I know we all know that hitting lots of uranium is a great success, but let's pull it back a bit. What constitutes kind of a technical success that makes you think?
Technical success. It's interesting. That's one of my least favorite types of success because I think it's a bit of a cop out in a way. But what we would consider success for key extension coming out of 2023 here would be identify where that structure is. Does that key leg fault continue into the property? If so, great. And identify the alteration. What's creating those gravity lows? What's changing the density of the rock? Is there an alteration system associated with that? If we can come on a key with a good structure and good alteration, then I think we're well down the path that we need to be down.
And the icing on the cake would be elevated uranium.
Yeah.
Good. Nathan, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Please come back on and tell me how the drilling's going when you've got some results and you've run your scintillometer up and down the core.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having us today, Merlin. And it's always a pleasure to talk about our projects and what we're doing. And, we're just really excited about 2023. I think it could be a great year for the company. So stay tuned.